What happens when a bride sneaks away minutes before her wedding, thinking closure is harmless? How can one short meeting behind the venue turn into public exposure, legal consequences, and the slow, quiet revenge of a man who never raised his voice? When the doors open and the guests see the truth, can she still call him the villain? Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible stories. I'm Isolde Marek, and if I could redo one moment in my life, it would be the 10 minutes before my wedding ceremony. Everyone keeps asking why I left the bridal suite, why I walked down the back path behind the venue, and why my fiancé's expression changed when I returned. The truth is, I thought I was being brave. I just wanted closure. One last talk with my ex, Evan. It wasn't supposed to mean anything. I told myself it would help me walk down the aisle with a clear heart. But closure is never clean when someone's watching. What I didn't know was that Daniel, my fiancé, had already noticed the missing minutes, the look on Evan's face, and the photo that shouldn't have existed. I believed I could talk my way through anything, that people would see my side like they always had. But this time, my words didn't save me. His silence did more damage than shouting ever could. And when the truth finally surfaced, it wasn't gossip or anger that ended us. It was the sound of papers sliding across a table, proof that love can die politely and completely. I woke up that morning feeling like I was floating through a dream I had already watched too many times. Everything around me looked perfect. The white flowers, the curling ribbons, the little gold initials on the table cards. People always said your wedding day was supposed to feel like a movie, but I never thought the movie would play out in slow motion. Lydia kept fussing with my hair, whispering that the curls would fall if I didn't stop moving. She said I was shaking. I told her I wasn't nervous, just excited. That was half true. The excitement had sharp edges. The makeup artist asked if I wanted more blush. I said I wanted to look alive, not desperate. She laughed politely. Lydia gave me that look that meant she didn't want to fight today. She asked if I'd eaten. I said I'd grab something later. She said there wouldn't be time later. I shrugged, pretending not to care, though my stomach was a knot. I kept checking my phone, even though Daniel had texted hours ago saying he was at the venue early, making sure everything ran smoothly. That was just like him. Steady, thoughtful, almost too calm. I stared at his message longer than I should have. "Can't wait to see you," it read. No emoji, just simple words. I told myself it meant confidence, not distance, but something inside me twitched anyway. That's when Evan's name flashed on my screen. I hadn't saved his number under his name anymore, but I knew the number by heart. "Outside by the garden," the text said. "Just wanted to wish you luck." My chest tightened. Lydia caught the change in my face and asked what was wrong. I told her it was nothing, just a vendor question. She nodded, too distracted to notice I was already slipping off my chair. The hallway outside the bridal suite smelled of flowers and perfume. People were rushing in different directions, photographers, coordinators, family members. My mother's voice echoed from somewhere, sharp and cheerful at once. I took the back door, the one that led past the kitchen and out to the garden path. The air hit me like cold glass. I could still hear the hum of guests arriving, but out here, it was quiet enough that I could hear the wind brush through the roses. Evan was leaning against the stone wall near the gate, hands in his pockets, that same half-smile he always had when he thought he was being charming. He looked exactly the same as the last time I'd seen him, maybe a little thinner, maybe a little older. He said I looked beautiful. I told him that was easy to say before the ceremony. He asked if I was happy. I said I was about to get married. Of course I was. He nodded, but his eyes didn't match the smile. He said he just wanted to see me one last time before I became someone else's forever. I told him he was being dramatic. He said I was the one who'd invited him to the wedding, which wasn't entirely true. I told Daniel it would be fine if Evan came because we were all adults now, because there was no reason to hide things that were over. But standing there, I realized how naive that sounded. He said he missed talking to me. I said this wasn't the time. He said he knew, but he needed to know I was sure. I laughed, pretending to be offended. I told him I'd never been sure about anything. He said then, why was I shaking? I wanted to say it was the weather, or nerves, or the weight of the dress, but none of that came out. He reached out and brushed a loose strand of hair from my face. For a second, the world went quiet. I stepped back fast, forcing a smile that didn't fit. He apologized, said he didn't mean anything by it. I told him he never does. A photographer walked by the other side of the hedge, camera in hand, talking to someone about lighting. I panicked a little, stepping behind Evan. He laughed softly and said, "What's the big deal? You're allowed to talk to people." I told him it just wouldn't look good. He said maybe some part of me still cared how it looked because it still mattered. I told him to stop talking in riddles. He said I'd always liked riddles. I hated that he was right. He asked if he could take a picture. I said no, but he already had his phone out. "Just one for memory," he said. I turned away, but he snapped it anyway. The sound of the shutter felt too loud. I told him to delete it. He said he would. I didn't believe him. I started walking back toward the venue. He called after me that he hoped I was happy, really happy. I didn't answer. I just kept moving, faster than I should have in heels, holding my dress up to keep from tripping. Inside, the noise of the wedding swallowed me again. The planner rushed up, saying it was almost time. Lydia was waiting near the door, eyes wide, asking where I'd gone. I said I needed air. She said I'd been gone nearly 10 minutes. I told her she was exaggerating. She wasn't. My mother appeared behind her, fussing about my bouquet, telling me to smile, telling me to breathe, telling me to forget everything except the aisle. I nodded, forcing my lips into shape. Daniel's best man came to the door with a nervous grin. "Everything ready?" he asked. I said yes, my voice too bright. Lydia's phone buzzed and she frowned. I caught the reflection of my own face in the mirror and barely recognized it. My lipstick looked perfect, but my eyes didn't match. I asked for a moment alone. They hesitated, but I insisted. When they left, I leaned against the wall, trying to steady my breath. My phone buzzed again, a text from Evan. "You left your veil by the gate." My heart jumped. I reached up and realized he was right. My head felt suddenly light, exposed. I didn't reply. I shoved the phone into my purse and told myself to forget it. I told myself nobody saw, nobody knew, that it was just a harmless talk. I told myself Daniel wouldn't notice anything because he never noticed small things. Then I remembered how calm he'd been lately, how he'd started checking his watch during conversations, how his messages had grown shorter. Maybe he noticed more than I thought. Lydia knocked again, said they were starting in 5 minutes. I said I was ready. My voice came out steadier this time. I picked up the spare veil from the vanity, pretending it didn't matter that it wasn't the one I'd chosen. I fixed it quickly, looked in the mirror one last time, and whispered that it was all fine. Everything was fine. The music outside started. People began to rise. I straightened my back, lifted my chin, and walked toward the door, pretending I wasn't leaving anything behind in the garden, except a piece of fabric and a mistake I could still control. The ceremony started like a scene someone else had written. The music swelled, the guests turned, and the air in the hall felt heavy with perfume and whispers. I walked slowly, eyes locked on Daniel at the end of the aisle. He looked calm, too calm, the way people look when they already know the ending. I told myself I was imagining it. His expression didn't change when I reached him. He didn't take my hand right away. He adjusted his sleeve first, then smiled faintly like everything was perfectly fine. The officiant started speaking, and the world blurred into colors and faces. When it was my turn to repeat the vows, my throat tightened. I felt Lydia's eyes on me from the front row. She'd been watching ever since I came back inside. I said the words clearly, but they didn't sound like mine. Daniel said his with steady precision, like reading from a script he'd memorized long before. When the officiant announced us as husband and wife, there was polite applause, not joy. Someone in the back whispered something that made a few people glance toward the side doors. I smiled harder, pretending not to notice. After the ceremony, guests flooded the reception hall. Glasses clinked, cameras flashed, and I let the noise wrap around me like armor. Lydia came up behind me, pretending to fix my veil but whispering, "Where were you earlier?" I said I'd stepped out for air. She didn't believe me. Her hand froze midair. "Someone said they saw you near the back gate," she murmured. I laughed too loudly. "Maybe they saw someone else in a white dress," I said. She didn't answer. She just pressed her lips together and walked away. I tried to focus on the crowd. My mother was telling anyone who would listen how proud she was, how I'd always been independent and fearless. Grace Cross, Daniel's mother, stood nearby, nodding politely but saying little. The contrast made me uneasy. I found Daniel by the bar, surrounded by groomsmen. He was smiling, but his shoulders were stiff. When I approached, they all went silent. I asked what they were talking about. He said they were just discussing the speeches. I said I hoped his best man kept it short. Daniel looked at me then, his eyes unreadable. "People remember short speeches," he said quietly. "They also remember the pauses." Before I could ask what that meant, the photographer called us for formal portraits. We posed under the floral arch, smiling until our cheeks hurt. Between shots, Daniel leaned close enough that only I could hear him. "You smell like roses and dirt," he said. I froze, unsure if I'd misheard. "Must be the garden scent they sprayed around here," I managed. He gave a small, polite smile that didn't reach his eyes. The photographer asked us to hold hands again. His palm was dry, steady, completely detached. During dinner, I made conversation with anyone who would listen. Laughter filled the table when I joked about losing my veil earlier. I said it had blown away, but Lydia's fork stopped midair. Daniel didn't react, but I noticed his phone light up beside his plate. He turned it face down. Grace whispered something to Leonard, and they exchanged a look that made my skin prickle. My mother filled the silence with stories about me as a child, trying to recapture control of the room. Halfway through the meal, Daniel stood to make a toast. His voice carried easily, calm and warm, the kind that made people lean in. He thanked everyone for coming, thanked my family for welcoming a quiet man into their very expressive world, and thanked me for my patience and charm. People laughed softly at that. Then his tone shifted almost imperceptibly. "Love," he said, "is about timing. About being seen at the right moment, not the wrong one." The crowd chuckled, unsure if it was a joke. He raised his glass. "Here's to clear moments." I clinked my glass against his, forcing a smile as the murmurs rippled. After the toast, people scattered to the dance floor. Lydia pulled me aside near the dessert table. "Did you talk to him?" she whispered. I asked who she meant. "Evan," she said. My stomach flipped. "Why would I?" I replied. She looked down, scrolling her phone. "Because he posted something earlier." I reached for her hand, but she stepped back. "It's gone now," she added, "but people screenshotted it." I felt the air leave my lungs. "What did it say?" I asked. She shook her head. "You don't want to know." I found my phone buried in my purse. Notifications blinked across the screen. My group chat with coworkers was buzzing. "Was that your ex in the garden?" "Bold choice, Isolde." I wanted to disappear. I opened social media and saw a single blurred photo tagged at the venue. Evan's arm half visible, a wisp of my dress in the corner. The caption, "Old sparks die slow." My chest went cold. The photo had been deleted, but not fast enough. My reflection in the black screen looked like someone else. I turned toward the crowd, scanning for Daniel. He was speaking with his father, both faces neutral. I decided not to panic. I could fix this, just like I always fix things. I deleted messages, told myself the internet moved fast. Tomorrow there'd be another story, another scandal. I found Daniel again near the dance floor. He asked if I was okay. I said I was perfect. He nodded. Good, he said softly, because people are watching. When it was time for our first dance, the lights dimmed. The song started, his choice, slow and old-fashioned. I wrapped my arms around his shoulders, but he kept his hands low, formal. You're tense, I whispered. You smell like soil, he said again, quiet enough that only I could hear. My smile faltered. Daniel, I started, but he turned his head slightly, looking past me at the guests. Keep smiling, he murmured. They love a happy ending. When the song ended, applause filled the room. I stepped back, dizzy with the effort of pretending. The DJ switched to upbeat music, and people flooded the dance floor. Daniel excused himself to speak with the coordinator. I followed him with my eyes, until I saw him step aside, checking his phone again. The blue light flickered across his face. For a moment, I thought he looked sad, not angry, just resolved. Then he slipped the phone into his pocket and returned to the crowd like nothing was wrong. Lydia approached again, holding her glass like a shield. You should tell him, she said under her breath. About what? I asked, forcing a laugh. About the picture, about the garden, about whatever that was. I said she was overreacting. She whispered, He's not. I asked what she meant, but she just shook her head and moved away. Later, when the cake was served, Daniel's father stood to thank everyone for coming. His voice was warm, but he stumbled over my name. People clapped politely. I kept my smile fixed. My mother squeezed my hand, whispering, Ignore them, darling. People get jealous of confidence. I nodded, but my hands trembled under the table. By the time the band started their last set, Daniel had disappeared again. I told people he was probably talking to the venue staff. Lydia found me near the door, phone in hand. He's been outside for 10 minutes, she said quietly. I asked how she knew. She turned her screen toward me. The live photo feed from a guest story showed Daniel near the courtyard, standing with a man from his office, both looking serious. He's fine, I said quickly. He's probably fixing something. Lydia didn't argue, but her face said otherwise. When he returned, he looked composed, almost refreshed. I asked where he'd gone. He said he needed air. The same words I had used earlier. He took my hand lightly, guiding me back toward the center of the room for the bouquet toss. The guests gathered, laughing, snapping photos. I forced cheer into my voice, telling them to count down from 3. When I threw the bouquet, it landed near Grace Cross, who caught it with surprising speed. People cheered, awkwardly. Daniel smiled faintly, clapping once. The night ended in polite farewells and quick exits. As the last guest left, I turned to find Daniel by the doorway, thanking the staff. He looked perfectly calm. I walked over, trying to sound playful. Are you ready to go? I asked. He looked at me for a long moment before answering. I'm already gone, he said softly, then opened the door for me to step through. I laughed, pretending it was a joke, but his eyes didn't follow the laughter. Outside, the air smelled like rain and roses, and somewhere behind the gate, a phone notification chimed once, faint and final. The next morning felt unreal, like the whole wedding had happened to someone else. I woke in the hotel suite alone, sunlight pooling on the untouched half of the bed. Daniel's ring sat on the dresser beside his watch. At first, I thought he'd gone down for breakfast, maybe to meet guests who stayed overnight, but when I called his phone, it went straight to voicemail. The silence in the room pressed on me until I opened the curtains too fast, flooding the space with glare. My reflection in the window looked ghostly, veil still pinned crooked in my hair from the night before. Lydia's name popped up on my phone. I hesitated before answering. She didn't say good morning. She asked if I had seen social media yet. I told her no. She said maybe I shouldn't. I opened it anyway. The first thing on my feed was a tagged post from one of Daniel's co-workers. A video clip of the reception, the toast, the dance, the slideshow that the DJ had played later in the evening. I hadn't stayed for that part. I'd been in the hallway fixing my makeup when it started. The caption under the video read, "When silence says everything." I tapped the clip. The screen filled with grainy footage of the reception hall. The opening frame showed Daniel standing at the microphone, smiling tightly. The music faded, replaced by his calm voice thanking the guests again. Then, instead of the preloaded photo montage of our childhoods, new images appeared. Candid shots, some from guests, others I didn't recognize. One of them froze me where I stood. It was the garden behind the venue. Me, in my white dress, facing Evan. The timestamp glowed in the corner. 23 minutes before the ceremony. My throat closed. Lydia was still speaking through the phone, asking if I'd seen it. I hung up without answering. I stared at the photo again, searching for some way to explain it. Bad lighting, an angle, a trick of movement. But it wasn't vague or blurry. It was proof. My pulse hammered. I replayed the moment in my head. Evan lifting his phone, me turning away. He'd promised to delete it. He hadn't. Someone knocked on the door. I froze, then opened it expecting Daniel. Instead, it was a hotel staffer holding a small envelope. "Mr. Cross asked me to give you this," she said. Her tone was neutral, practiced. Inside was a simple card with the hotel logo and a single line in Daniel's handwriting. "Room is paid. Take the time you need." No signature, no note of affection. I told myself he was just cooling off. He'd understand once I explained, once he heard my side. He was logical, forgiving. He always said problems were solvable if people didn't panic. So I packed, slowly, pretending that normalcy would make it true. By afternoon, I was back at our apartment. The living room looked exactly as we'd left it. Gift boxes piled neatly, cards arranged on the counter, half the flowers already wilting. Daniel's shoes were by the door, but his jacket was gone. I called him again. Voicemail. I left a long message about misunderstanding, how nothing happened, how I should have told him about the text from Evan. I even joked weakly that at least we had proof of good lighting behind the venue. The moment I hung up, I hated myself for that line. That evening, my mother came by uninvited, still wearing her glittering dress from the wedding. She said the family group chat was chaos. People were asking questions about the video. She told me not to worry, that Daniel was just being dramatic. "Men hate public embarrassment," she said. "Give him a day to cool down." She opened a bottle of white wine and poured 2 glasses before I could protest. I asked if she'd talked to his parents. She said Grace hadn't answered. "They're sensitive," she added with a dismissive wave. I nodded, but inside, panic was settling. I texted Lydia again. Was he there when the video played? Her reply came instantly. He sent it to the DJ himself. My hands went cold. "Why would he do that?" I typed. "Because he wanted witnesses," she answered. That night I couldn't sleep. Every sound in the apartment felt louder than it should. The hum of the fridge, the occasional creak of pipes. Around midnight, I noticed Daniel's desk light under the door of the study glowing faintly. For a heartbeat, I thought he'd come home quietly. I opened the door and found the room empty. The laptop was gone, the top drawer locked. Only the faint smell of printer toner lingered, sharp and sterile. I sat on the floor staring at the closed drawer. A sticky note on the side of the filing cabinet read simply, "Archive A, backup." I peeled it off and crumpled it. Whatever he was archiving, it wasn't paperwork. The next morning, Lydia called again. Her voice was careful, almost pitying. "People are talking," she said. "Someone shared screenshots." I told her to stop reading them. She said she couldn't, that the comments were everywhere now. Groom exposes cheating bride with receipts. My stomach turned. "It wasn't cheating," I said. She was quiet for too long before answering. They don't care what it was. I spent the rest of the day messaging Daniel. When he finally replied, The text was short. "Don't contact Evan again. He's already been advised." I typed a dozen responses but deleted them all. Advised by who? His father's lawyer? A friend? My reflection in the dark window looked small, cornered. By the third day, my work group chat was full of polite silence. Normally, my boss would flood it with check-ins and updates, but now every message thread skipped my name. I told myself they were giving me space. Then HR emailed asking if I could clarify recent public material that references the company indirectly. My stomach dropped. Someone had linked my name to the viral clip of the wedding video. I shut my laptop and paced the room. I kept hearing Daniel's toast in my head. People remember the pauses. He hadn't raised his voice, hadn't insulted me. He'd just let the evidence speak. It was worse than anger. It was strategy. That night, I drove to his parents' house. Grace opened the door halfway, surprised. Leonard appeared behind her, his face unreadable. I said I needed to talk to Daniel. Grace shook her head. "He isn't here." I asked when he'd be back. She said quietly, "He's taking time." I tried to smile. "We all are." She didn't smile back. "He's taking time from you," she said. On the drive home, my phone vibrated with a message from an unknown number. "Please confirm delivery time tomorrow." 9:25 a.m. No name, no details. I assumed it was a spam courier notice. Still, I couldn't shake the unease. When I got back, the apartment felt rearranged, even though nothing had moved. The second mug on the counter was gone. Only mine remained. I made tea and sat by the window, scrolling through comments that blurred into one endless chorus of judgment. Some called me unfaithful, others pitied me. A few defended me, saying maybe the picture meant nothing. I wanted to believe them. Just before midnight, I heard the faint hum of the printer again. It startled me until I realized the sound was coming from the neighbor's unit through the wall. Still, my heart wouldn't slow. I went to Daniel's desk again and pulled at the locked drawer. Nothing. Then I saw a small USB taped under the bottom shelf labeled June 14th, the wedding date. My hands shook as I peeled it off. I didn't plug it in. I just sat staring at it, tiny and silent, proof that he was collecting pieces of our life while I was still pretending to control the story. I told myself I'd call him tomorrow, that I'd fix everything once he calmed down. But as I placed the USB on the desk, my phone buzzed again. Another message from that same unknown number. Confirmed. Courthouse slot held. I stared at the screen, trying to tell myself it was nothing. Just a mistake. But deep down, I already knew it wasn't. The days that followed blurred together like a film running in reverse. Every morning, I woke up expecting Daniel's side of the bed to be warm again, expecting some text that would explain everything. Instead, the apartment stayed silent, and the air carried that faint smell of toner that refused to fade. The USB was still on the desk where I'd left it, a tiny weight I couldn't bring myself to touch. I spent most of the morning on the couch, scrolling through messages I shouldn't have opened. My coworkers had stopped being subtle. Someone sent a screenshot of an office chat where my name was the punchline. Guess she's better at publicity than marketing. I wanted to reply, to correct them, to say the story online wasn't real. But anything I said would feed it. Silence was safer, or so I kept telling myself. Around noon, the apartment buzzer went off. My heart jumped, stupidly hoping it was Daniel. It was Lydia. She walked in without waiting for me to invite her, eyes darting to the piles of wedding gifts stacked by the wall. "You haven't opened any?" she asked. I said I'd been busy. She looked around, frowning. "You've been sitting here," she said flatly. I told her Daniel just needed time, that once the dust settled, we'd talk. She sighed, sitting opposite me. "He's not angry," she said. "He's done." I laughed sharply. "You don't know him like I do." She folded her arms. "You're right, I know him better now." That stung more than I wanted to admit. I asked what she meant, and she said she'd run into him at the grocery store near her office. He was calm, polite. He said he hoped you'd take care of yourself. My throat went dry. That's it? She nodded. He didn't sound bitter, just finished. I told her he wasn't finished with anything, that couples had rough patches, that everyone needed space. She looked at me the way she used to when I was caught lying as a kid. Isolde, she said softly, he's closing doors, not leaving them open. I turned away, pretending to look for a glass of water. The truth was, I couldn't stand how sure she sounded. I said she was dramatizing, that people like Daniel didn't make decisions that fast. He's practical, I said. He thinks before acting. She hesitated, then said quietly, that's what scares me. When she left, the apartment felt even emptier. I walked from room to room, touching objects like they might explain something. The half-folded laundry, the coffee mug with the chipped rim, the framed photo from our first vacation. Everything looked staged, like a set someone forgot to dismantle. Late that afternoon, I went to work, partly out of guilt and partly to prove to myself that I still had a normal life. The office was quieter than usual. A few people offered tight smiles that didn't reach their eyes. My manager called me into the lounge for a quick word. I already knew what it meant. He said there had been complaints, that clients had seen the video. It's not about judgment, he said carefully, but perception. I told him perception wasn't reality. He nodded sympathetically. Sometimes it becomes reality. He said I should take some personal days, that it would help rebuild my professional boundaries. I wanted to argue, but the words wouldn't come. On my way out, 2 co-workers whispered near the elevator. I didn't catch the words, just my name wrapped in a nervous laugh. I kept walking, head high, pretending I didn't hear. At home, my mother had left a voicemail full of advice I didn't ask for. You have to take back control of the story, she said. Go online, tell people it was a misunderstanding. The internet moves fast. I deleted it halfway through. Evening came heavy and slow. I couldn't eat. I opened the balcony door for air and saw the neighbor, Mr. Kovac, watering his plants again. He looked up, met my eyes, then turned away quickly. I used to think he was nosy. Now I realized he just didn't want to be part of the show. I went back inside, the sound of the city muffled by glass. Daniel's desk drawer caught my eye again. I tried the handle, still locked. The label Archive A stared at me. My fingers brushed the USB on the surface. I told myself not to look, that it would make things worse. Then the printer in the corner whirred once and stopped, as if reminding me it existed. The sudden sound made me jump. I unplugged it out of irritation. But when I turned, I saw something new on the counter. 2 mugs again, his old white one beside mine. For a second, I thought he'd come home. Then I realized it was clean, dry, set out deliberately, like a message. I picked it up. Underneath was a folded receipt from a courier service. The handwriting on the back was unmistakable. Return completed. That night I dreamed of the wedding again, but this time the garden was empty, and when I looked down, I was holding a bouquet made of paper instead of flowers. When I woke, the sound of my phone vibrating filled the room. Unknown number again. A text. Package delivered at 9:25. I checked the door. A thick envelope lay on the mat, no sender listed. My pulse spiked, but I didn't open it. I placed it on the table and stared until the letters blurred. I knew it wasn't from Evan. He wouldn't dare. But I also knew it wasn't just another spam delivery. I spent hours avoiding it. I cleaned the kitchen, folded clothes, deleted more comments online. Every task felt mechanical, like moving through water. When I finally tore the envelope open, the air left my lungs. Inside was a copy of our joint bank summary, neatly highlighted, every withdrawal annotated. At the bottom, a small sticky note in Daniel's handwriting, for your records. No threats, no accusations, just documentation. Cold, precise. It was the same tone he used when closing an old project at work. I sank into the chair, clutching the paper. It felt like he was preparing for something that didn't need me anymore. That evening, Lydia called again, voice sharp. "Did you get served?" she asked. My heart stumbled. "What are you talking about?" She hesitated. "Nothing. I just thought maybe. Never mind." She asked if I'd seen the new post on social media. I said no. She said someone had uploaded the full video from the wedding slideshow, not just the still frame. It was spreading again. I couldn't bear to look. I told her to stop checking. She said she couldn't when it had my name in every caption. "You should call him," she said finally. "You should at least ask what he wants." I said I already knew. After we hung up, I sat by the window with the papers in my lap. The city lights flickered in the glass like tiny judgmental eyes. I thought about calling Daniel one more time, but pride won. I told myself he'd reach out when he was ready to listen. I rehearsed explanations that sounded rational, that Evan had surprised me, that I had panicked, that it was all blown out of proportion. I practiced them aloud until they almost sounded believable. At midnight, the printer light blinked once, even though it was unplugged. I stared at it, heart racing, before realizing the glow came from my phone charging nearby. A new message appeared on the screen, from Daniel's old number. Only 3 words. "We're both free." I typed back instantly. Free from what? But the message failed to deliver. The number was already deactivated. I sat there until dawn, watching the sky lighten, wondering when exactly silence had become the loudest language between us. The following week moved like fog, heavy, shapeless, impossible to escape. I told myself to keep a routine, to act normal. People forgive faster when you look composed. So every morning, I dressed for work even though I wasn't supposed to be there. I made coffee in 1 mug, not 2. The apartment stayed too clean, like a showroom. I told myself Daniel would notice that when he came back. By the 3rd day, the story online had turned from scandal to debate. Strangers were writing essays about modern loyalty using my name. Someone uploaded a slowed-down version of the garden photo with dramatic music. The comments were split, half pity, half disgust. I kept scrolling anyway, searching for one voice that said, "She didn't mean it like that." My mother called constantly. "You have to post," she said. "Say you were framed or that the picture's old." I told her I wouldn't lie. "Then say it was emotional confusion," she said. "People love vulnerability." I told her to stop. She said she was only trying to protect me, but I could tell she loved the attention, the way people suddenly treated her like the tragic mother of a misunderstood bride. I went for a walk to escape her voice. Outside, the air smelled like wet concrete and lilacs from the corner florist. I saw a man who looked like Daniel across the street. Same walk, same quiet posture. But when he turned, it wasn't him. Still, I followed the figure until he disappeared into a crowd. I hated myself for it. I went home, heart pounding, hands cold. That night, Lydia texted, "You should sit down before you open Instagram." My stomach dropped. I opened the app anyway. At the top of my feed was a photo posted by one of Daniel's friends. The same garden shot, but this time the caption read, "Truth needs no caption." Under it, a single comment from Daniel's account, a check mark. I threw the phone onto the couch. My pulse raced. I told myself he was angry, humiliated, trying to make a point. He'd delete it later. He always calmed down eventually, except he wasn't the one who ever raised his voice. That calm was what terrified me now. I stayed up all night drafting a message I never sent. Every version sounded too desperate, too defensive, too small. When dawn came, I went to the mirror and said out loud, "You're not the villain." It sounded thin, rehearsed. Around noon, there was a knock on the door. I didn't answer right away, afraid it was a reporter. When I finally opened it, a man in a navy jacket handed me a sealed envelope. "For Ms. Marek," he said. His voice was formal, detached. Before I could ask who it was from, He was already walking away. I stood there for a long time before opening it. Inside was a single sheet, a letter from Daniel. No greeting, no ending. Just neat, careful handwriting. Please stop contacting my family. I've begun handling things properly. You'll be informed through the right channels. I read it 3 times before it made sense. Properly. That word sat in my stomach like a stone. He wasn't shouting. He wasn't forgiving. He was building something I couldn't see. I called Lydia. She didn't answer. Then my mother. She said to ignore it, that he was bluffing. He's hurt, she said, but men like that come around. I wanted to believe her, but I could still see the line of his signature, precise, deliberate, as if it were proof of some irreversible step. That evening, I poured myself wine and tried to watch something mindless. The show kept playing scenes of people laughing at parties. Every laugh sounded like an echo of the wedding reception, that fake applause, that quiet tension before everything cracked. I turned it off and opened my laptop. The screen blinked to life, showing my work inbox. There was one unread email from a generic address, delivery confirmation, courthouse 9:45 a.m. I stared at it until the letters blurred. I didn't sleep. I kept checking the window every few minutes, half expecting Daniel's car, half afraid to see it. By morning, I was still awake, makeup smudged, heart hammering. I convinced myself to go out, to act composed. I met Lydia for coffee near her office, hoping she'd give me something, information, maybe pity. She looked tired. He's not bluffing, she said quietly. I froze. What did you hear? She hesitated. I can't say exactly, but he's talking to someone official. Financial stuff, maybe more. I tried to laugh, but it came out shaky. He wouldn't drag lawyers into this, I said. We're married. Lydia's expression didn't change. That's why he will. I left the cafe before finishing my drink. Outside, people were living normal lives, shopping, laughing, rushing for buses. I felt invisible among them, like a ghost still rehearsing lines for a scene that had ended. At home, another envelope waited on the floor. I told myself it was junk mail, but my hands were trembling as I picked it up. No return address, just my name printed neatly. Inside was a copy of our marriage certificate and a sticky note in Daniel's writing. Retain your copy for records. That night, my mother called again, furious. He's embarrassing us, she said. You can't let him control the story. I said there was no story left to control. She said, then make a new one. I hung up. I opened the balcony door again, the city noise pushing through. For the first time, I noticed Daniel's car wasn't parked on the street anymore. He must have taken it days ago, but now the empty space looked final, like punctuation. I sat at his desk and opened the locked drawer with a small screwdriver. The click was loud in the quiet apartment. Inside were folders labeled bank, utilities, photos, witness. My throat went dry. Each folder contained printed screenshots, messages, and receipts. My messages, his call logs, copies of posts from that night. Even the hotel charge after the wedding, highlighted and initialed. He'd documented everything. I dropped the folder and stepped back. The air felt too thin. He hadn't been silent because he was broken. He'd been silent because he was preparing. I poured another glass of wine to steady my hands, telling myself he wouldn't actually use any of it. He was too rational, too private. But then I saw a final item in the drawer, a calendar reminder printed on a slip of paper. Appointment, Friday, courthouse 9:45 a.m. The same time as the email. I tried calling him again, one last time. The call rang twice, then went to voicemail. I left a message saying we didn't need to make this ugly, that I was sorry for embarrassing him, that everything had gotten out of control. My voice cracked halfway through. When I hung up, the clock on the wall clicked past midnight. I stared at the folders spread across the desk. They looked neat, harmless, like office paperwork. I wanted to shred them, to erase the proof. But then I imagined Daniel's calm voice saying, "You call it destruction. I call it order." The printer light blinked again, soft and red. I walked over, pressing the power button out of reflex. The machine whirred and fed a single page through, blank except for 3 words faintly printed at the top. "It's already filed." The paper slipped from my hand. Outside, the city hummed, unaware that somewhere between pride and proof, a marriage had turned into evidence. I told myself I'd face him tomorrow, explain everything, fix it somehow. But deep down, I already knew. Whatever was coming next, it was no longer my turn to speak.